Hello and welcome to Bounding into Comics. My name is John Trent. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief at Bounding into Comics. And today I got a story about Game of Thrones star Emilia Clarke playing the victim in order to sell her upcoming new comic book series. But before we get to that, I'd like to ask if you could please hit that subscribe button if you are not already subscribed. If you are already subscribed, please make sure you are still subscribed. YouTube likes to unsubscribe people sometimes. And then hopefully by the end of this video, I will have earned your like and that you will give us a like and that you will share this video with your friends and family. And then on top of that, hopefully you can hit that bell so you never miss out on our video and you will get notifications. With that out of the way, let's get to the meat of this story. As I said, Game of Thrones and Terminator Genesis actress Emilia Clarke decided to play the victim in order to sell her upcoming new comic book series from Image Comics titled M.O.M, Mother of Madness. The 3-issue series is co-written by Clarke and Marguerite Bennett with art by Lila Lays. Not sure how you pronounce that. The story follows Maya, quote, an under-the-weather scientist by day, over-the-top superhero by night, and badass single mom 24/7. Image Comics described the book in a press release as, quote, Deadpool action collides with Fleabag comedy when Maya activates her freakish superpowers to take on a secret sect of human traffickers. Sounds great. Nothing wrong with that. The series was initially announced back in April when Clarke spoke to Entertainment Weekly about it, when she explained the entire premise of the series began as a joke. She said, quote, about 3 years ago, I was in a car with a bunch of friends and was like, hey guys, wouldn't it be really funny if, and then I woke up the next day and was like, that would be funny. That would be effing cool. Why not? Specifically describing the series, Clarke said, we're always calling mothers superheroes, and I'm like, what if they were? What if they legitimately were superheroes? She wanted to say, Maya has had a very hard life, and she finds herself in a place where everything that makes her unique, she hates and is ashamed about it. It's only in the discovery of her powers that she finds her true acceptance of who she is. As for her powers, Clarke said at the time, there's many things that she can do that are pretty cool. She then went on to reveal her powers are derived from her menstrual cycle. This is what Clarke said, quote, she can do a lot of stuff at certain moments in her month. She can do all of these wicked things, but they all come from the fact that she is a woman who has a menstrual cycle. I thought it would be cool to have all the things that women don't like about themselves, flip that, and make those the things that make her superhuman. Clarke would then play the victim, detailing she didn't feel safe in comic book shops when she was younger, and that she didn't see any women on the covers of comic books when she did go into the store. She claimed, my brother was a comic nerd growing up, and I wasn't allowed in the shops. I wasn't allowed to go in with him because I was the loser little sister. In the moments that I was allowed in, there weren't a lot of women on the covers, and there weren't a lot of women in the shops, so I didn't feel safe to explore it at that age. I thought she said she wasn't allowed in the shops, but then literally 2 sentences later, she said she was in. So we've already got her caught in a lie there, because she was allowed in the shops. As far as women on the covers, I'm pretty sure there are lots of women on comic book covers and have been for quite some time. The first appearance of Wonder Woman was in December 1941, and she's clearly on the cover of that, and she's been in comics since then. So there's a lot of women on comic book covers, and Wonder Woman is just one example. So that's another absolute just ridiculous lie. And I find it hard to believe that she didn't feel safe to explore the comic shop, especially when her brother is in there. Maybe it was her brother that might have been making her feel unsafe, but I doubt that, and I doubt that if you're going into a comic shop, you feel unsafe. You just go in and you start looking at the comics. Or you ask the guy at the desk, like, hey, like, what's a cool comic? And you just tell them what you're interested in and they'll give you a recommendation. Feeling unsafe is just an absolute garbage, woke ploy that we've seen used throughout the years, and it's utter trash, and Emilia Clarke using it makes it no different. It is still utter trash. But not only did she play the victim in regards to comic shops when she was a child, but she also threw out that card when she began attending San Diego Comic-Con for Game of Thrones. She claimed, cut to me at Comic-Con, and I'm there going, I'm still not seeing a lot of women. I'm still not seeing women that aren't in Lycra reflected back at me. Are there any women out there that are superpowered but aren't in a skin-tight costume? Not that I can see. That's what led me to the wouldn't it be funny if conversation. Again, I'm going to go back to Wonder Woman. Wonder Woman is not, I mean, I guess some of her costumes are in skin-tight costumes, but I mean, originally she's just wearing like a corset and a little skirt. Which is not a skin-tight costume, and now recent incarnation, it's like battle armor, and she still has the skirt as well, but her top is more of like a breastplate. I can't really comment on not seeing women at San Diego Comic-Con. I have never been to San Diego Comic-Con, so I can't really say. I have been to other Comic-Con conventions in the past decade, and there are lots of women there. It'd be hard to tell what the ratio from men to women are. It's probably pretty on par to the cut between the number of men and women in society overall. So I don't believe her when she's saying she wasn't seeing a lot of women at Comic-Con, especially when she was going during Game of Thrones. I feel like there were probably a lot there, but I've never been to San Diego Comic-Con, so I really can't say about that, but I am skeptical given I've been to lots of other Comic-Cons and there's lots of women there. She would then go on to make a bizarre claim that female comic book characters are not shown as fallible, and that's the reason she decided to make her comic. Although she, as you will recall, at the beginning of this video, she said she made it as a joke that she was pitching to her friends. Well, now it's that she didn't see female comic book characters as fallible. I mean, this whole thing is just like a woke PR release. It's just absolutely trash. I don't even think she believes any of this stuff. I think this is just some PR person told her to push this stuff, and that's what she's doing. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's coming from a Marvel PR person, because she's now working on that Marvel Secret Invasion show. But this is what she said. She said, "But the biggest reason why I wanted to make this comic is because I wanted young girls to look at a woman that was fallible. Obviously, you're seeing that a lot in the industry. You've got all of these incredibly empowering female shows, but I just felt like I hadn't seen it in this genre." Like, this is just absolutely insane. Almost all superhero stories show the heroes as fallible characters at some point or the other, and they have to grow and defeat whatever is holding them back, that's making them fallible. They have to overcome what is making them fallible, whether that's a villain, whether that's some kind of like mental issue, whether that's a physical disability. There's lots of women as vulnerable and fallible in comic books, and to claim that she hasn't seen it in the genre means she probably hasn't looked at the genre at all, at all. She hasn't looked at it at all. I mean, one has to wonder what comics she's been reading where she hasn't seen fallible women. I don't know what's going on here. It makes utterly no sense. But she then went on to say, "I think back to my younger self, and I think if I was allowed in that comic book store and I got to see a version that I felt like I could relate to on some level, I would have been absolutely in. It's a very personal experience that everyone has with comics. These are characters that people are passionate about and care about deeply and relate to. I wanted to throw a new character in the mix and see if people related to her in a way that was impactful to them." You know, that's really cool. I think that's great. I mean, I think what she's saying there makes perfect sense, and I think as comic book readers and comic book fans, we understand that. Yes, you want to relate to characters. That's not meaning you have to see yourself in them, but it means you can relate to them. And I think what she says here is true. So that was the interview with Entertainment Weekly back in April. She would reiterate much of that in a new interview with Variety. She specifically doubled down on her first Comic-Con experience, which was at 22. She said, "I read a lot of fantasy novels full of rich worlds as a child, like Lord of the Rings. That was always the place my imagination would gravitate toward. Later on, when I went to Comic-Con for the first time at 22 with Game of Thrones, I was amazed at what I saw, almost entirely men." Again, I've already made that point where I'm skeptical at that. So, but she's doubling down on it in an interview with Variety. And she went on to say, "Later, as tides turned in the industry and #MeToo emerged, I began to look at the community through those eyes, and it was arresting." All right, so she's saying that she's part of the #MeToo now, and maybe that's why she's making this comic as well. The actress then threw out a bunch of numbers about female representation in comics without citing a source. I have no idea where these numbers came from. I tried to do a little bit of research, and what I was finding, it looked like it comes from a 2016 book titled Superwomen, Gender Power and Representation by Carolyn Coca. but I'm not sure the validity of it, and I'm highly skeptical of those statistics, having been running this website for over half a decade. But this is what Clarke said. She says, in doing my research, I found that 16% of comic book creators are female, according to a 2019 study, and only 30% of comic book characters are women. So everything I was reading about this 2016 book says it's like 26.7% of characters are female, and that's just them looking at Marvel and DC, and not looking at anyone else, just Marvel and DC. And they're looking. They looked at like 34,000 Marvel and DC. Again, I haven't looked at their actual numbers or seen any of their actual data, so I'm extremely skeptical of that research. And then using it to cite to try and like talk about female representation. That seems to be the only purpose of the research, given the title of that book. But Clarke went on to say, on the other hand, roughly half of comic book buyers are female. Something did not sit right with me in that exchange, and all these signs were telling me to go make my own. So I actually think that's probably completely false, even by her own testament. So remember, she said she didn't feel safe in the comic book store. She wasn't allowed in. Like there were no women at Comic-Con, but somehow they're like half of comic book buyers. Her story isn't adding up here. It doesn't make sense. Actually, like looking at what she's saying doesn't match up to what she's saying. It contradicts each other. Again, these PR people just build it like, and maybe I'm being wrong, and it's just Clarke, but she's totally like, it's the contradiction is just too obvious. And if you just sit and think about it for 30 seconds, it just blasts you in the face. You can't miss it. So that makes absolutely no sense there. She would go on to tell Variety about Maya and what her powers are, so we get a little bit more details about her powers. Specifically on Maya, she says she's a single mom that's got to get crap done. This was born from the idea that single mothers are superheroes. You need superhuman strength to do that. When you get into your 30s and your friends start having kids, you're like, oh my gosh, I was not aware of what it took. Holy crap. Yeah, being a mom is a tough job, but women have been doing it for centuries now. As for her superpowers, she adds the bloating, the hair growth, the mood swings, the acne, all of it. We hate that when it happens. Speaking for myself and everyone I've ever met who has a period, what if we turned that around and made the period something that we can feel as this unique, crazy, superhuman thing that happens in our body? When Maya is scared, she goes invisible. When she's angry, she has superhuman strength. She can swing like Spider-Man from her armpit hair. So I know people are probably making fun of the premise. I actually think it's pretty comic booky. It reminds me of that Dave Chappelle skit where the superhero gets his powers from touching the hoo-ha, and that's how he R's, but he saves. And I don't know. This just kind of reminds me of that. I think it is very comic booky. So I'm not really against it. Per se, I think it could be actually quite hilarious if done right. So if you're actually interested in checking this book out, it will feature a main cover by Joe Radcliffe and a variant cover by Jen Bartel, and it hits comic book shelves on July 21st. I have no intention of checking it out. That premise doesn't really interest me. I'm not a big Deadpool fan as it is. I can see people might find it interesting if it is well done. It's hard to tell if that will be the case. My inclination is based off of everything Clarke is saying. It's very agenda-driven. So when things are agenda-driven, it's usually not a very good story. So I wouldn't expect it to be top quality. But she's definitely trying to market this book by playing the victim. Not only as a victim as a child when she was trying to go to a comic shop, but also as an adult going to San Diego Comic-Con. And then she threw out a bunch of statistics about like trying to imply that women are somehow oppressed in the comic book industry, which is just absolute garbage. And that whole premise I just reject it. But let me know what you think. What do you make of Clarke trying to play the victim to hawk her comic book? And do you think it will work, or will it backfire? Let me know. My name is John Trent, and you've been watching Bounding into Comics.